This is the first time in the history of Beloit College that we've actually been prepared for an assembly before it was supposed to start. Yep. So, of things that make this one uniquely glorious is the class of '68 took it upon themselves to start marching in when they felt like it. Well done. Well done. And, there's about 150 people that have registered from the class of 1998, and they've given themselves permission to arrive at some point. Wow. My metric for how enjoyable Friday night of reunion weekend is the difference between the number of people that register for the President's Run on Saturday morning and the number of people who show up for the President's Run on Saturday morning. And last night was spectacular. Yeah, there are a lot of you in the class of '68 who didn't happen to make it at 7:30 this morning. So at the Golden Hoods dinner last night, Don and Rosemary Gruber, both members of the class of '68, in an enormously gentle and kind way, offered me advice for this moment that I promised to take to heart. They said, "For God's sake, keep it short." And then as she was walking in, Lena Neal gave me these lips, which I think were intended to do the same thing. Okay, I get it. Yeah, but I will ask you just to take a moment to join me in thanking the Development and Alumni Relations staff for making this weekend so very special. They've worked tirelessly, they've worked creatively to do so. Nicole Kluwer in particular, thank you very, very much for all your efforts. It's like a 40-ring circus, and it's fantastic to see it all go. All of you have gotten to know and appreciate the amazing talents of Mark Wold, the Executive Director of Development and Alumni Relations. He's a member of the class of 1995 and has been an invaluable part of Beloit College in different leadership capacities for the last 11 years. Well, Mark has been lured away from us by Grenzebach, Gleer and Associates, a consulting firm in Chicago, where they have given him several titles, each one loftier than the last, a big office with a view of the lake, and the opportunity to earn enough money so that the development office at Beloit will hound him daily for the rest of his life. Thank you, Mark, so much for all that you've done for your alma mater. Even still, it is a great day to be a Beloiter. Let's start with a game of Jeopardy. I'm going to give you the answer, and you can supply the question. You ready? From the Oxford English Dictionary, the definition for these reads: 1, a tailless South American rodent of the cavy family, originally raised for food. It no longer occurs in the wild and is now typically kept as a pet for laboratory research. What? What are guinea pigs? 2, a person or thing used as a subject for experiment. Here are 2 uses of the term applied. Quote, "We were used as guinea pigs to test the effects of radiation on human beings." Secondly, the school is a guinea pig for the national initiative. Those really are the quotes from the Oxford English Dictionary. Yep. So you are here today with the class of 1968, which is the first class to graduate under the new Beloit plan. They are Beloit plan's self-designated guinea pigs. We are here at this alumni assembly to celebrate our alumni. It's as simple as that. Whatever sins you committed as betas or teaks or phi-size, but particularly betas, these are now viewed as youthful indiscretions. Those meetings you had with Dean Bill Flanagan that began with, "What were you thinking?" are now the source of laughter with your children as you recount with them your days as sweet mad youth of old Beloit. The 10-page paper that you began at 1 o'clock in the morning and turned in 9 hours later without even checking the spelling, and then expected a faculty member to write copious notes to help you become a better writer, has in fact left a bitter scar with whatever poor faculty you inflicted with that god-awful atrocity. But even that scar is fading. Welcome back. Welcome home. One of the best parts of my job are to meet with lots of alumni from across many generations. Among the most glaring things that I have learned is that the further removed an alum is from their date of graduation, the more they appreciate, the more they substantively can articulate the role that this college has played in the quality of their lives, their careers, their work as citizens of various communities, their personal lives. The college guide that is particularly important to us is entitled Colleges That Change Lives. It includes 4 to 5 page descriptions of about 40 schools that the authors argue are disproportionately transformative, and we are among those 40 schools. The section on Beloit concludes with the following 2 sentences. Quote, "One alumna, an English PhD candidate at the University of California at Berkeley, sums it up perfectly, a skill she likely sharpened at Beloit." Quote, "Beloit alums don't settle for lives they have to live. They choose the lives they want to live. And there is no better endorsement for a liberal arts education than the freedom to choose your own adventure, not just for 4 years, but for the rest of your life." End quote. Choose the life you want to live rather than a life you have to live. No wonder the appreciation for Beloit grows and grows, but the appreciation flows in the other direction, from your alma mater to you, just as strongly. On the occasion of the college's 25th anniversary, President Chapin addressed a gathering not unlike this one. "Alma mater," he said, "looks fondly on your faces. Her heart swells with worthy pride as she reviews the lives you have been living since you went out from her charge, and she borrows the honors you have won and wears them as jewels for her adornment today. Your presence fills her heart with gladness and her face with smiles." So, you ask, when did my life become the measure of an institution? The answer is the moment you became a Beloiter. You can't avoid it. In fact, you have a responsibility to embrace it, to own it, to champion it. As keepers of the college's name, you must not keep it to yourself. This is one of the reasons why the Distinguished Service Citations are so meaningful. Rosemary Widman Gruber, Marty Dyer Feltus, Raj Fernandez, Luke Summers, you are 4 of our jewels, and we bask in your reflected glory. We celebrate Beloit College's alumni, you, through the metaphors of our DSC award winners. Alumni are unavoidably the external evidence of the college's worth and better evidence we could not hope for. I love this moment together. It is a great day to be a Beloiter. Thank you for coming back. Okay, so how many of you know the words by heart to Domine Salvum Fac? Good thing we provided you with a crib sheet for this. So at the back of your program, you can find the words. We have an intrepid quartet that will come up and lead us. I'm sorry. Amici. We're going to do Amici. I'm sorry. I gave you a bum info, so we're going to do Amici. How many of you know the words to Amici by heart? Even less. That's great.
Put her in the middle.
You're supposed to sing with us.
Yes.
You take the parts, we're just going to sing the melody.
Okay.
Hail, Beloit, our alma mater, thou canst never die. Heaven guard and fortune bless thee as the years go by. Amici usque adora, joined our hearts and minds. Hail, Beloit, our alma mater, is the tie that binds. Loyal sons and daughters praise thee during college days. And the breeze brings back an echo from the silver graves. Amici usque adora, join our hearts and minds. Hail, Beloit, our alma mater, is the tie that binds. Amici usque adora, join our hearts and minds. Hail, Beloit, our alma mater, is the tie that binds.
Good morning. Welcome home. Yay. My name is Leslie Deshawn Knapp. I'm your Alumni Board President, and I am here. Oh, sorry. And I don't like microphones. My name is Leslie Deshawn Knapp, and I'm your Alumni Board President, and it is with great enthusiasm that I'm going to introduce past Distinguished Service and Young Alumni Award winners, and then our slate of new joinees. So please join me in recognizing the recipients of the 2018 Beloit Distinguished Service Citations and Young Alumni Award. So I am going to read this because I think this is really important. These are people who exemplify what Beloit really means. In awarding the DSC and YAA awards, Beloit College and the Alumni Association have endeavored to recognize those alumni leading extraordinary lives of purposeful consequence, of living embodiments of the mission of Beloit College. Today's honorees will join arms with past recipients, including such Beloit luminaries as Elizabeth L. Morrissey, class of 1908, who was a distinguished professor of history, political science, and economics at the University of Notre Dame for 40 years. Alonzo W. Pond, class of 1918, an archaeologist recognized as one of the world's foremost authorities on deserts. He accompanied Roy Chapman Andrews on the historic Gobi Desert expedition. William Willard Wirtz, class of 1933, was a Secretary of Labor under Presidents Kennedy and Johnson. James E. Kohler, class of 1943, joined the Wisconsin State Laboratory of Hygiene as a bacteriologist, specializing in the diagnostic areas of microbiology. She was a pioneer in the field of immunology. Elizabeth Katz Mooney, class of 1948, was a researcher with the famed Kinsey Institute and spent 40 years educating young people about sexuality and 20 years teaching the subject at the University of Indiana. Edison Way, class of 1968, I'm thinking he's hopefully here, was director of the Logan Museum of Anthropology from 1972 to 1985 and founding director of the Museum Studies program. He went on to become director of cultural affairs for the state of New Mexico, then completed a Master of Divinity degree in 2008. These are the luminaries to which we point when asked who we hope our students will become. And now, these four will join those recipients as Beloit College's highest honors, the Distinguished Service Citation and Young Alumni Award. I now have the honor and privilege to introduce the 2018 Distinguished Service Citation and Young Alumni Award recipients. Please join me in welcoming Annette Hicks Harms to introduce our first Distinguished Service Citation recipient, Rosemary Widman Gruber of the class of 1968.
Good morning. I came to Beloit in 1968 from a farm in Iowa. I was lucky enough to meet another young woman from a farm in Wisconsin, Rosemary Woodman. To paraphrase a famous movie line, that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And not just with Rosemary, but with her husband, Don Gruber, also a Beloit graduate and fellow Vesper choir member. Rosemary and I became Kappa Alpha Theta sorority sisters and enjoyed, if I can use that word loosely, completing our college experience under the new Beloit plan in 3 years. We both eventually moved to the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, where we would continue our friendship and I could observe the many accomplishments of this remarkable woman. The Beloit Distinguished Service Citation Award recognizes outstanding achievement in areas of civic and professional activities. Rosemary certainly exemplifies the high level of achievement this award is designated to recognize. She has undertaken one of the hardest jobs for many public institutions, fundraising. Her efforts have benefited St. Paul's United Arts, the University of Minnesota's Veterinary Teaching Hospitals, the University of Minnesota Comprehensive Cancer Center, and children's hospitals and clinics. Rosemary has also used her talents and energy to fundraise and guide many other important community institutions and causes. Among the many others who have benefited from her efforts are the St. Paul United Way, House of Hope Presbyterian Church, St. Paul YMCA, Ramsey County Historical Society, and our own Beloit College. But I know for Rosemary, her most important accomplishments has been raising 2 wonderful daughters, Lynn and Ann, and there are also 4 very energetic and talented grandchildren who are a delight to Rosemary and Don. It is truly my honor and privilege to introduce to you a recipient of this year's Distinguished Service Citation Award, my friend, and as her husband Don frequently says, you two must be sisters, Rosemary Gruber.
Yeah, this is quite a microphone. Okay, thank you, Tony. I'm surprised and very honored to be standing here this morning. My congratulations to the other Distinguished Service recipients, Marty Dyer-Feltus, who, believe it or not, was my freshman college roommate, well, underclass college roommate, excuse me. Rajiv Fernando, and the Somers family. And the Somers family, I believe, reminds us how fragile and fragmented our world is. And our sincerest and deepest hearts go out to you. Thank you for being here. Of course, my thanks also to my husband, Don. We have had many Beloit adventures as well as many other adventures together over these past 51 years that we've been married. So how did I graduate? I graduated early and got married early, all that stuff. Anyhow, I am also very, very grateful to my parents. As Tony told you, I grew up on a farm here, just about 35 miles north of here. My parents felt that college education was very important. They began saving for all of us, my siblings and for me, when we were born. My dad, I don't know how he did it. He had 4 of us in college at one time. 2 siblings, and yes, my mother went back to college when I did. And so when I got those grades from Beloit and opened that, and I thought I was pretty smart, well, then my mother would come along. She's got a lot more experience. She'd say, well, let's compare grades. That did not work out so good for me. It meant I had to study a heck of a lot harder. So in 1964, the September of 1964, believe it or not, those of us who've been here a while know that out here you could drive around and you could park in this little circle out here. And my parents brought me to Beloit College and helped me move in right over here to what was then North College, where there were 24 of us women living with Mom Larson. And we lived there for 2 terms, and then we moved to the other end of campus, and now it's Campbell Hall and the home of econ and sociology and all sorts of other good things. I took full advantage of Beloit. I loved music appreciation, art history, literature, and yes, even astronomy. Tony talked me into taking astronomy because there was no lab. That's true. Maybe I should have taken more science classes with labs. I probably would have done a whole lot better. Anyhow, I was a German major. Herr Beverly Clarity was my advisor. Steve, you probably might have had him as well. Steve Huxman, also a German major. I remember one of the most, all I can say is one of the most brutal classes I took with him was on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons for an hour and a half each week. We sat down. There were 3 of us in the class, so that meant you couldn't cut class. There were 3 of us, and we read Faust, auf Deutsch. No kidding. Oh, whatever. But you persevered, you got through it. And then my field term. There was a connection with Warner Electric, a local business. They had an office in Germany, so off I went to Germany to work at their German office for 4 months, and it really was quite an adventure. I lived with a German family, I worked in the office, I did all sorts of things, I did some translating, but everything I translated they checked, because you're working in an engineering firm, you cannot make a mistake. They took me on a number of good outings. It was an awful lot of fun. One of the most, they always, had to take the American girl somewhere. One of the most interesting things was that I was a bridesmaid in a German wedding. I have no clue what was going on, but it was fun. The conversations were mostly all in German, of course, and so what I ever promised and did and said, I seem to have come out of it okay, but my goodness, there were days. So how did my German language and all that background really influence and shape my career and what it was I have done in the Twin Cities? I was a development officer, and I know a lot of people hear those words, and they will walk away from you as quickly as they can, because development means fundraising. And I worked primarily for medical institutions, veterinary medical hospital at the University of Minnesota. Growing up on a farm, all that stuff made a lot of sense to me. It was easy. So sure, you asked people to raise money for what was going on at the veterinary medical center. I worked at Children's Hospital. Children's pediatric medicine was very interesting. The biggest challenge, however, was working at the University of Minnesota Comprehensive Cancer Center. I worked with absolutely brilliant, outstanding scientists, medical doctors, researchers, students, and I sure at that time wish I had taken more biology and chemistry. It would have done me a lot of good. So I had to figure out how to talk with these researchers, et cetera, and then how to describe that to people who may wish to invest. And I'd talk to the researchers and I'd say, okay, Dr. Kersey, tell me what it is you do. And he told me, and I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, what is he talking about? So what I finally said to all the researchers, and this is where I became a translator of sorts, I said, I need 5 sentences in plain old English that say what you do that are going to be comprehensible to a potential donor. And I got those 5 sentences, from all these different researchers. It was words I never had heard before. Carcinogenesis. I worked with all these people. It was great. I got the 5 sentences. I began meeting with donors, and the rest was absolutely pure pleasure. It was sheer joy. I got to meet people and be at a very, very personal intersection in people's lives. I met people that I otherwise, I don't know how I ever would have met them. Yeah, sure, there were the famous people. There were CEOs and bigwigs from corporations, but then there were people like you and me, people who walked in the door, who were looking for some sort of support for whatever type of cancer they were interested in or interested in supporting. I could help those donors understand the basics of research, because if I could understand it, chances are they could understand it too. And these donors really, really wanted to change people's lives, and by golly, they did. I had one donor, and I won't take you the time to tell you, but this guy calls up on the phone one day, and he says, I got a lot of money to give, and I thought, oh yeah, this is a setup, What is going on here today? And the guy was from California. He ended up giving the cancer center about $3 million, and we had a new therapy for a particular type of pediatric leukemia. We had that ready for clinical trials in 4 years, because the researcher working on it just sort of fast-forwarded his research and made it all happen. And so a whole lot of children's lives have been touched by that one donor. That sort of thing repeated and repeated, all over the board. There weren't all of those donors that came in with, 6- and 7-figure gifts. There were a lot of donors that came in just like you and me and did what they could, and for them, I am always very, very grateful, and everyone is very grateful. I always remembered that every gift could change a life. And more often than not, it was the donor's life, because they became so connected to the research, and they had a real reason that they wanted lives changed. And so more often than not, they were changing their own lives with the generosity that they shared at the University of Minnesota. So in the broadest sense of the word, I became a philanthropy translator. I wasn't translating German anymore, thank God, but I became I really could help people understand the importance of research and the importance of investment in research. And it was absolutely a remarkable, remarkable opportunity. And I truly credit Beloit College for giving me the skills, first of all, to be the translator, and then, of course, for all the background, that goes with being a liberal arts student. It was absolutely, absolutely stunning. It was more fun than I should have had in a career, I think. But I do thank the Alumni Association for the recognition and the award. I'm pleased to be here, and thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, a photo op? A photo opportunity. Oh, excuse me, we have to do a photo op, okay. We'll do this.
How about that?
Oh, come on. All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rosemary. It is now with great pleasure that I introduce Raj Fernando of the class of 1993 and our next service citation recipient. Here to introduce him is his sister, Tanya Fernando.
Good morning. The first sentence of Beloit's mission statement is strong and inspiring. It reads, Beloit College engages the intelligence, imagination, and curiosity of its students, empowering them to lead fulfilling lives marked by high achievement, personal responsibility, and public contribution in a diverse society. End quote. These words are meaningful in today's society. We need such students, and we need such graduates. These words could not better describe my brother. My family and I are so proud of him. He is still young and has accomplished so much. Yet it's not his accomplishments that I would like to speak of, even though they are noteworthy and many in his career, politics, and philanthropy, especially in the arts and animal welfare. It is to something more mundane to which I turn. Character, and his character is not at all mundane, but rare and shining. He is my brother. And as a sister, I would like to share a story that has never left me. When he was 4 years old, a family friend brought her newborn baby to introduce us to. We were all amazed at this tiny little being. She filled us with awe. Before they left, my brother presented the baby with a gift, a box about the size of a little book with an orange knob that had musical notes painted on it. It was a music box that played a tune from The Sound of Music. It was not any toy, but magical, his absolute favorite, and I knew how much he loved it. I was only a few years older, but I vividly remember that moment because I was struck by his giving of that which he loved most. He gave the very best that he could give. Quite evolved for a 4-year-old, and he has never stopped evolving. It is this story, this spirit of generosity and giving, that embodies his life. He thinks of others first and always gives his best. And because of this, he has given so much good, so much inspiration, so much love to his family and friends, his community, and the world. We are living in a time where it seems that civic responsibility has crumbled. Yet my brother lives a life fully embedded in community and the nation, and where he is always looking to see how he may help others. He lives a life filled with determination and responsibility, as well as those wonderful necessities of creativity, imagination, and innovativeness. For him, there are never any limits, and this becomes contagious. He brings together people from all walks of life and treats everyone as an equal. This seems to be the ethos of Beloit College. It is my deepest pleasure to introduce my brother, Rajiv Fernando.
Thank you, Tanya. I'd like to thank the Alumni Association, President Scott Bierman, Presidents Dick Nemick, John Burns, former President Vic Farrell, Dean Flanagan, the Board of Directors, the DSC recipients, Professors Jerry Gustafson, Jeff Adams, Bob Elder, Bob Hodges, the late Milton Fader, alumni, students, and friends. When I was contacted by Beloit several weeks ago about the Distinguished Service Citation, I was extremely honored and humbled. This is my 25th year reunion, and I, like many of you here today, am amazed at how quickly the time goes by. I feel very proud of many of the things I've been able to do career-wise, philanthropically and politically, and like all of you, I've had many ups and downs in all facets of my life. As I stand here today, I look back at my experience here. I know that Beloit was crucial in helping me grow into the person I am today. It was here on this small campus in Wisconsin where I learned the importance of facts and the value of inclusion. I started freshman college in the fall of 1989, having grown up in a Republican suburb of Chicago. What was immediately obvious is everyone was great. Everyone could be themselves, which was much different than the conformism students were used to in high school. I remember my RA sitting me down and asking how everything was going, and I said it couldn't be better, but I also confessed I was a little shocked to see men kissing. This was very new to me, and I'll say at the time, probably not happening in many colleges around the country. My RA then asked what I would do if I found out my best friend was gay, and I remember saying, he's like a brother, and I'd always want him in my life, so I guess I'd be okay with it. And that sounds terrible now, but the reason I bring it up is I don't think I was a bad person. I was ignorant, and it took Beloit College and a freshman dorm RA willing to just talk to me about an uncomfortable topic to evolve my thinking. I loved all of my 4 years at Beloit and the lifelong friends I made. The social side, life aside, and the social side was amazing, playing in a band, the sports, the parties. My most important takeaway from Beloit was understanding to get true facts, you have to know your source. My freshman year Latin American history class with Professor Bob Hodges changed my life. Researching America's role in Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, Chile, we were only allowed to use primary sources, meaning declassified State Department documents, declassified CIA documents, no New York Times, no Time magazine. And in doing this, I came to realize that many of the so-called facts we learned growing up were just not true. We had simply accepted that the Contras were the freedom fighters, but by learning directly from the sources at the time, it was clear that I was mistaken on many counts. And this serious lesson to know your source provided me a critical thinking tool that I've applied to virtually every topic throughout my life. Especially in this day and age with so-called facts being thrown at everyone, I'm skeptical of people's ability to discern the truth who haven't attended Beloit College or had a class like Bob Hodges. So I was going to try to stay away from politics when I wrote this, but I figured this is Beloit. In November of 2011, I joined a group led by Madeleine Albright to monitor the second presidential election in Egypt. In a small town outside of Luxor, we saw this very elderly lady walk into the polling room and stand in line. You could see the emotion on her face for finally being able to see democracy in her lifetime. After she walked up to the desk, she saw her name, dipped her thumb in the ink, and made her mark. She then began crying hysterically as she exited toward the door. Now, luckily, people were able to stop her and explain that she hadn't voted, she just signed in. And though democracy in Egypt was short-lived, my point is that we can't take our democracy for granted. There's a reason we're the only superpower and the largest economy in the world, and this wasn't by chance. In 2012, I also had the privilege of joining President Clinton with the Clinton Foundation on a trip to Africa. We visited Mozambique, South Africa, Rwanda, and Uganda. One day outside of Johannesburg, about a dozen of us got off the bus to play soccer with a bunch of 6 to 10-year-olds. We were all high-fiving and laughing for a couple hours, the sweetest kids you can imagine. And when we got back on the bus, we were all crying. All these kids had AIDS, and they were all being kept alive by the work of the Clinton Foundation. Now, during the presidential campaign, every time Hillary was getting far ahead in the polls, the press would run with untruths about the foundation and try to make it look like a Ponzi scheme. I had many heated debates with reporters. I told them in Johannesburg, I just mentioned to you, and much of the takeaway were their jobs and their pay were getting cut, and if they didn't sensationalize stories, they'd get fired. But they all thought it was fine because Hillary was going to win. But based on that, my reaction was, if it wasn't this time, it would be inevitable that a candidate would win that shouldn't win. We've had a problem with fake news throughout history. Now these pressures within journalism are making it more dangerous. And as with my college freshman story, ignorance does not make people bad. However, there are millions of people who have not had our Beloit College experience. I believe when representatives go to Washington from all parties, they're well-intentioned, and they want to do the right things for their country and their constituents. Between gerrymandering and Citizens United, Washington is broken. This is where the next generation can and must take things over. We haven't seen mobilization like this in a generation. Everyone needs to vote and be involved with what they hold dear. To quote President Clinton, there's nothing wrong with America that can't be fixed with what's right with America. Now, the struggle to overcome hardship is personal for all of us, but we need to keep fighting for what we deem important in our lives. The worst thing that happened to me and my family was the premature passing of my mother from ovarian cancer in 2011. She was my all-time favorite person and the most loving, selfless person I've ever known. Now, something I've never shared before is that when my mother died, I was really scared for my dad. They were married 45 years, and they were always at each other's sides. After she passed, he just kept going and going. And a couple of years ago, he successfully fought his second bout with cancer, and he still keeps going and going. Winston Churchill famously said, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts." My dad is my hero, and anytime I want to throw in the towel, I just think of him. I hope all of you have someone like that in your lives to keep pushing you forward. Thanks so much. I'm honestly humbled at this honor. Thank you.
All right, this just keeps getting better and better. Now I'm honored to announce the next distinguished recipient, Marty Dyer Feltus of the class of 1968. Here to introduce her is friend and alumna Buff Poindexter Martin, also class of 1968.
Good morning. I'm very happy to be here to introduce Marty. Marty and I met at North College dorm, where we both lived as underclassmen. And coincidentally, this has already been mentioned, Rosemary Gruber was her roommate that year, and they became fast friends. Marty was and is a very energetic, curious, and passionate person, and, of course, a hard worker. She is the model for many of us as the Energizer Bunny. It was another coincidence that she married Steve, Sigma Pi, as my husband Frank is. After Beloit, when Marty and Steve ended up in Boston, Frank became a frequent visitor while he was at law school. We stayed in contact by vacationing in Vermont and visiting them there when they moved to the Northeast Kingdom. We got to see the town and local college she and Steve supported and meet their children. When the Feltuses came to Chicago to tour schools with their daughter, Meredith, they stayed with us and now have been back in Chicago this last week to tour a school with Meredith's son, Alex, who is with us today. Marty spent her time in the early years of her children raising them and doing local reporting. She has attended so many meetings with a better attendance than the elected officials, it was suggested that she run for election herself, and she did. Marty has spent 20 years serving her local constituents on the select board and many other local boards in her town, and also serves currently in the Vermont State Legislature. From my experience, she gives a very good tour of the Capitol building in Montpelier and explains the workings of Vermont government. Along with Marty's own passion for government service, she is a wonderful and supportive wife to Steve, who has so many interests and passions it would take days to enumerate. When Steve traveled to Honduras to do eye clinics for the needy, Marty accompanied him to be his translator, putting her Beloit major to work. It is an honor to introduce Marty Dyer Feltus, who is a superlative example of be the change that our society needs. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you. Thanks, Buff, for your generous comments. And thank you very much to the Alumni Association for offering this award. I am truly humbled and amazed, and I'm very, very pleased. I will admit to you that Beloit College was extremely positive for me. It was a transformative experience. I loved the new plan. That's why I came to Beloit. The flexibility, the diversity, the intentionality of everything we did was extremely intriguing as I pored over college catalogs, trying to consider schools. And once I got here, indeed, that's what it turned out to be. I had a fantastic field service experience in New York City, having come from Tulsa, Oklahoma, never really been east before. I went on Spanish seminar for a semester with Dr. Murray and 16 other kids. It was just a wonderful experience with a lot of change throughout the 4 years. And I think when we discussed yesterday, it was a discussion in the Science Hall about the factors of the new plan. There was a comment made that the Beloit plan was to help produce self-generating students, persons who went on and continued to do things and search for themselves. And I think that concept, along with certainly family expectations, is what led me to always want to strive to do my best in whatever professional activity I had. I spent 27 years working for a company that you would never imagined lived in northeastern Vermont, made electrical insulation materials for the manufacturers of transformers. So I used my Spanish skills to develop the market in Mexico and in South America for this company. I learned what electrical engineering I needed to know, what material science I needed to know in order to be able to communicate that with engineers and with purchasing managers of these various companies, and ended up training sales staff to handle that as well. As Buff mentioned, I spent a lot of years, and just recently retired, from 20 years of being on my town select board. It's not a political position at all. It's simply running a small town of 5,000 people. And you talk about streets and sewers and water plowing or water systems, snow plowing in the winter, fire department, police department, and that kind of thing. But it's an administrative role, but yet it has some policy involved in it as well, and I truly enjoyed that. From having understood what town government was like, I decided to move into state government after I retired from my regular 9-to-5 job. And I have been there now for 6 years, and I'm running for another term. It has been a wonderful experience. I have met lots of people, and I need to tell you that I'm not the only Beloiter who has served in the Vermont General Assembly. When I was there from 2013 to 15, I worked with Marjorie Ryerson from the class of 1965, she and I served on the same committee regarding natural resources and energy issues. And just this last term, I worked with Kurt Taylor, who's from the class of 1972, and he and I have worked on water quality issues for the state of Vermont. So the experience in local government and in state government and my professional experience has been intriguing and has been very rewarding. And I think the Beloit experience of always wanting to look for something different, finding out how else you can make things better, has been an enduring legacy. And I just want everyone to know that I have truly enjoyed my traditions with the Beloit, and it's a lasting legacy, and I thank you very much. I know, we don't realize we're supposed to do this. Thank you.
Wow. All right. Now it's time to introduce the Young Alumni Award recipient. So I am pleased and pleasured to introduce Luke Somers, class of 2008, as this year's Young Alumni Award recipient. Paula Somers, Luke's mother, and Jordan Somers, Luke's brother, will be accepting this award in honor of Luke. They will also be joined by Scott Clodfelter, Luke's big brother through the Sacramento, California Big Brothers Big Sisters program, and he will introduce both Paula and Jordan. Thank you.
I had the privilege to meet Luke Somers in April 1991 when he was just 10 years old. I just become his big brother through the Big Brothers Big Sisters program in Sacramento, California, and I was matched with Luke as he became my little brother. Luke was a shy boy, and I remember he hardly spoke when we first had our first trip together to the California Railroad Museum. I wasn't even sure he enjoyed himself, but at the end of the trip, I asked if he wanted to get together again, and he quickly nodded yes. In time, Luke opened up, and we became fast friends, sharing many adventures together almost weekly for the next year. From whitewater rafting to the Sacramento Kings basketball games and water parks, we stayed very active. He and I formed a special bond in the year before I unfortunately had to relocate to the Midwest for my career. Leaving Luke behind was one of the toughest parts of that move for me. But as an employee of a major airline, I was able to return regularly for visits and share buddy passes with Luke so that he could visit me in Kansas City and later in Atlanta. The last time I saw Luke was in February of 2004, just months before he began his time here at Beloit. He kept me updated on his college plans throughout that summer, and he was so excited to become a student here. From the very beginning, I was amazed by Luke's expansive worldview. He grew up in England and had the unique experience of visiting Europe and the Middle East with his mother at a very young age. And like his mother, he developed an affinity for travel and a natural curiosity of and appreciation for other people and cultures. The path he took was not at all surprising to me. He would never have been satisfied with a typical life in the United States. I grew to love not only Luke, but also his remarkable mother, Paula, and younger brother, Jordan. Paula was a single mother and a full-time student when we met. The family faced some challenges as she worked to build a career and support her family. I have such admiration for her perseverance through difficult times and the unwavering dedication to the well-being of her sons. She raised two fine boys to become exceptional, well-rounded young men with a commitment to serve others. Luke and I didn't stay in contact as often through his college years. We corresponded by email, but it became increasingly difficult to keep in touch once he moved abroad. Paula and I spoke a few times a year, and she advised me of his whereabouts and accomplishments after Beloit and through his time in Yemen as a photojournalist covering the political uprising in the country. I know Luke's experience at Beloit was life-changing. He always spoke highly of the college, and I know he would be extremely proud to know you have recognized him with this prestigious award. It is an honor for me to be here today, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to reflect on my friendship with Luke and to introduce his family, his mother Paula and brother Jordan.
Well, of course, Luke should be here today. He would be so proud. I'm so proud of him. I want to thank you for giving Luke this honor. You're really helping carry on the legacy of Luke with the scholarship program and this honor here. And I don't know. I have few words, a lot of feelings, but few words. Luke, I'll just tell you a story how Luke came here to Beloit. I don't think he knew about Beloit. This was in 2003, and he was on eBay, and won this sort of big van in Indiana. And he took a train to go and pick it up. And on that train ride, he met a Beloit student, a woman, and they talked for hours and hours. And at the end of that train ride, he decided to come here. There's nothing that was going to stop him. So when he got home, he told me this, and he got in this Beloit zone. There was no way that he was going to be refused. And he wasn't. He wrote the most fantastic essay. It was just, he couldn't have been refused. So, yeah, he was accepted, and he actually took that van, filled up all his possessions, it's quite a big van, and came to Beloit. And he loved it here. He loved the teachers, the whole faculty, the students. And here's one of his friends right here, Chris Mooney, who was a very good friend of Luke's and shared in his experiences. And he was able to go to Egypt and Morocco on a study abroad program, so that was feeding him. And just the progressive atmosphere, the things he learned here, it played such a big part in Luke going in the direction that he did. He was not a typical, American guy. He was a citizen of the world, I would say. And I've talked to his friend, Fuad, in Yemen, who said Luke was Yemeni. He got on so well. He was so helpful to all the people there. Start teaching photography to people. He'd help people with their work. And his passion was photography and showing just sort of aspects that other photographers were not showing, like women in bowling tournaments and children with murals. He loved it there. And I don't know. It was, of course, a terrible shock, and I just wish he was here. So, but thank you so much for giving us
my heart is thumping right now, which is what I get for not preparing anything, any speech. But as I was telling Scott yesterday, how does one prepare really for a speech? I mean, you have to be in a certain frame of mind, but when it comes to something like this, when it's so personal, you just show up, and maybe you say something, maybe you don't, and here I am saying something. And just as a testament to Scott, Luke and Scott were in the Big Brother, Big Sister Foundation, and we had to move to Seattle just a year after Scott left, or around then when Scott left, and I was asking Mom, when do I get a big brother? Because I loved Scott so much, and I enrolled quickly thereafter. But there were some things I was going to say that Mom kind of already mentioned, how Luke got to know Beloit on one of his random money is there to be spent impulse buys, buying a Chevy Gladiator van in Indiana, and taking a train ride to go do it just because it was all kind of part of the journey and part of the adventure. And he meets this woman, and when she explains Beloit, he's enamored with it, and he finds out more. And I think it's just such a testament to the school itself, and it's such a testament to Luke. I think it works both ways, and it's been a long road for me and Mom, obviously, and doing our best to grow and change. And I think a lot of kind of pillars to what Luke would want us to do, to just kind of keep things moving and keep things flowing, and try to ward off all the bitterness that comes from something like this, because it's really easy just to get bitter and not be positive, but it's not very conducive to embracing that kind of change. And in this experience over the last few years, I've gotten quite fixated on just this idea of labels, and how much labels can be so restrictive of